The champagne cork hit the crystal chandelier in my parents' dining room. Mom held up her phone showing the cruise itinerary: Venice, Athens, Barcelona. 14 days. First-class cabins. Dad grinned, adjusting his country club polo. Your building, Mom said, not looking at me, was dragging down the family's financial reputation. We took action. My brother Craig raised his glass. Finally. Someone with business sense. I sat at the far end of the table, the seat I'd occupied at every family gathering for 32 years. The chair where Dad once told me, real estate isn't for daughters who major in art history. The same table where Mom said, find a good husband, sweetheart. That's a woman's real portfolio. That was 11 years ago. The week I bought the Whitmore building with money I'd saved from teaching art classes and weekend gallery work. Dad had laughed. That condemned dump on 4th and Madison? You'll lose everything. I'd restored it alone. Every cracked window. Every water-damaged wall. Every collapsed ceiling beam. The building wasn't just property. It was 1,887 craftsmanship. Original crown molding, hand-carved banisters, terracotta facade work that modern builders couldn't replicate. The paperwork's done, Dad said, sliding a folder across the table. His fingers left prints on the leather. Buyer wired the funds yesterday. We've already allocated $200,000 for the European trip. Your brother gets $300,000 for his boat. Your mother's getting the kitchen remodel she's wanted. The sale closed. I asked. Tuesday afternoon, Mom said. She was already scrolling through Italian restaurants. You should thank us. That building was a liability. I thought about the ghost ledger I'd started keeping 3 years ago, when I realized my family's cruelty had a measurable cost. Thanksgiving 2019 brought photos of Whitmore building restoration progress. Dad interrupted after 12 seconds. Nobody cares about your hobby. Cost, confidence, self-worth. The belief that my accomplishments mattered. Christmas 2020. Building featured in Architectural Digest's Hidden Gems of Historic Preservation. Family's response. They must have been desperate for content. Cost, joy. The ability to celebrate personal success. Easter 2022. One City's Heritage Preservation Award. $15,000 grant for continued restoration. Mom's comment at dinner. Participation trophies aren't real achievements. Cost, pride. The understanding that excellence would never be enough. The calculations went on. Years of emotional debits. Missed milestones. Confidence erosion measured in moments of silence when I stopped sharing anything that mattered. Craig stood checking his watch, a Rolex I'd learned to recognize. I'm meeting the boat dealer at 4. 42-footer. Needs the cash by Friday. Dad pulled out his phone, thumbs moving fast. Texting the Hendersons. They'll want to hear about the sale. Successful business move like this doesn't happen every day. I watched him. Really watched him. The confidence of a man who believed he'd outsmarted his daughter. The posture of someone who'd never faced real consequences. There's a moment I've learned when you realize your family operates on a fundamental assumption. That you'll remain the underestimated one forever. That their narrative, daughter who makes poor decisions, daughter who needs guidance, daughter whose success is always luck, will remain unchallenged. I'd spent 11 years feeding that narrative slot machine. Kept pulling the lever, convinced that eventually I'd hit the jackpot of their approval. The gambler's fallacy in emotional form. Each quarter I inserted, each achievement, each award, each recognition, I told myself, this will make them see me. But slot machines don't pay out because you've earned it. They pay randomly if at all. And I'd been playing with money I couldn't afford to lose. The doorbell rang at 6:47 p.m. Dad frowned. We're not expecting anyone. Mom opened the door. Dr. Patricia Chin stood there in a gray suit, her Historical Society credentials on a lanyard. Behind her, 2 police officers and a man in a city attorney's jacket. I'm looking for Douglas and Martha Whitmore, Dr. Chin said. Her voice carried the particular weight of someone who'd spent 40 years protecting things people didn't understand the value of until they were gone. That's us, Dad said, smile fixed. Is this about a donation? We're actually in the middle of a family celebration. This is about 447 4th and Madison, Dr. Chin interrupted. She held a leather portfolio. Heavy. The kind that held documents with official seals. The Whitmore Building. I understand you claim to have sold it. Mom's smile flickered. We closed on Tuesday. The buyer wired. The Whitmore Building, Dr. Chin continued, has been under historical preservation protection since 2019. It's listed on the National Register of Historic Places. Any sale or transfer requires Historical Society approval and city oversight. She opened the portfolio. Who authorized this transaction? The room went silent. That specific silence where oxygen seems to vanish. Dad recovered first. We're the owners. We can sell. You're not the owners, I said quietly. Everyone turned. I bought the Whitmore Building in October 2014, I continued. With $127,000 I'd saved from teaching and gallery commissions. The deed has been in my name for 11 years. Dr. Chin nodded. Which is why the Historical Society contacted the actual owner, your daughter, when the fraudulent sale paperwork appeared in the county clerk system this morning. Craig's glass slipped. Caught it. What? Your daughter, Dr. Chin said, looking at my parents, has been the Historical Society's partner for 6 years. She personally funded $180,000 in facade restoration. She won the 2022 Heritage Preservation Award. The Whitmore Building is one of 12 properties she owns in the downtown district. Mom's phone dropped. The screen cracked against marble. 12, she whispered. One of the police officers stepped forward. We need to see the documentation of this sale. Dad fumbled with his phone. Pulled up emails. Bank transfers. The officer photographed each screen. The city attorney spoke for the first time. Mr. Whitmore, you've accepted $1.2 million for property you don't own. You've already distributed substantial portions of those funds. Where did this money come from? The buyer, Dad said. He wired. There is no buyer, I said. There's no legitimate buyer willing to pay $1.2 million for a historically protected building without doing basic title research. Dr. Chin pulled out more documents. This is the Whitmore Building's actual valuation. $3.8 million. It houses 6 commercial tenants, including an architecture firm and 2 art galleries. Annual rental income, $340,000. Your daughter has maintained 97% occupancy for 8 years. That's impossible, Mom said. She teaches art classes. She barely. She owns the building where she teaches, Dr. Chin said. And 11 others. The Whitmore Building is her flagship property. The property list came out. Each one a microclimax I could see register on their faces. Property 1, 447 4th and Madison. The Whitmore Building. 1887 construction. Restored 2014 to 2019. National Register of Historic Places. Where this all started. Where Dad said I'd fail. Property 2, 1523 Heritage Boulevard. Mixed-use complex. 3 retail spaces for apartments. Purchased 2016. Dad had mocked. You're overextending yourself. Property 3, 889 Riverside Drive. The old textile factory I'd converted to loft spaces. Craig had called it, a disaster waiting for a demolition crew. Property 4, 1847 Oakmont Boulevard. Commercial Plaza. The Historical Society's records showed my anonymous donation of $50,000 for downtown revitalization. Mom had once said, charity is for people with money to waste. Properties 5 through 8. The residential portfolio. 2 duplexes, 1 fourplex, 1 historic home converted to offices. Each purchased during family gatherings where they discussed my financial immaturity. Property 9, 2234 Madison Street. Craig's jaw tightened. That's where the Madison Club is. Your daughter owns that building, Dr. Chin confirmed. Your country club rents the 3rd floor from her. Property 10, 665 Park Avenue. The building where Mom's favorite boutique occupied the ground floor. Where she'd shopped for today's celebration outfit. Property 11, 1100 4th Street. The parking structure the city commissioned. Revenue, $180,000 annually. Property 12, 33 Waterfront Plaza. The Crown Jewel. Historic Maritime Building. 7 commercial tenants. Featured in last month's Preservation Today magazine. Dad had gone gray. Not pale. Gray. The color of someone whose entire narrative just collapsed. 12 buildings, he said. You couldn't have. 11 years, I said. While you told everyone I was wasting my life. The police officer closed his notebook. Mr. Whitmore, we need to discuss the source of the $1.2 million. Now. What followed was procedural. Methodical. The kind of justice that operates on documented evidence rather than emotional satisfaction. Step 1. Dad produced the wire transfer records. The officer photographed everything. The money had come from an overseas account. The buyer had used a shell company registered in Delaware. Red flags everywhere. Step 2. The city attorney examined the closing documents. They were professionally printed. Official looking. But the notary stamp was from a company that had been dissolved in 2021. The signature wasn't mine. Handwriting analysis would later show 99.2% certainty of forgery. Step 3. The officer called the bank. Put it on speaker. The wire transfer was still pending. Real estate fraud flags had frozen it automatically. No money had actually arrived. Dad's European cruise? Booked on credit. Craig's boat deposit? Also credit. Mom's contractor? Waiting for the funds. Step 4. The evidence mounted. Dad had told the buyer about the building after seeing a local news segment about historic downtown properties. He'd contacted someone he found online. They'd built an elaborate scam. Professional emails, fake legal documents, wire transfer confirmations that were screenshots, not real banking records. Step 5. My attorney arrived. I'd called him 2 hours ago when Dr. Chin contacted me about the fraudulent paperwork appearing in county records. He carried 11 years of documents. Every deed. Every tax payment. Every renovation permit. Step 6. The officer issued citations. Dad. Fraud, identity theft, forgery. Mom. Complicity, misrepresentation. Craig hadn't committed crimes yet, but his boat deposit was made with money he believed was real. He'd have to return it. Step 7. The city attorney explained consequences. Criminal investigation. Potential charges. Restitution for any money that changed hands. And because they'd told the country club, because they'd boasted publicly, because Craig had already given his boat dealer a bad deposit. Civil liability multiplied. Step 8. Dad tried to negotiate. We're family. We can work this out privately. The officer shook his head. You committed fraud. You forged documents. You attempted to sell property you don't own. This isn't a family matter anymore. Step 9. Dr. Chin added the final piece. The Historical Society takes property fraud seriously. We're pursuing maximum penalties. Your daughter has been an exemplary partner. You attempted to destroy protected heritage. Appeals? There wouldn't be any. The evidence was absolute. I stood. I need to say something. Everyone turned. For 11 years I fed the slot machine of your approval. Each property I bought, each award I won, each recognition I received, I kept thinking. This will make them see me. But you were never going to see me. Because your narrative was more important than my reality. Sweetheart, Mom started. The ghost ledger, I continued, doesn't balance anymore. You took too much. Years of dismissal. Decades of being the daughter who didn't matter. Every family photo I'm cropped out of. Every achievement you called luck. Every success you claimed was my phase. Dad's hands shook. We were trying to help. You were trying to steal $1.2 million from property you thought I was too stupid to protect. Dr. Chin closed her portfolio. Officers. They escorted my parents out. Mom crying. Dad arguing. Craig sat frozen, phone in hand, probably calculating how to cancel the boat deposit. The house emptied. Just me in their dining room at my assigned seat at the far end of the table. 6 months later, I stood at the grand reopening of the Whitmore Building's restored ballroom. 14-foot ceilings. Original chandeliers we'd found in the basement. Terracotta detailing that had taken 9 months to repair properly. Dr. Chin handed me a plaque. Historic Preservation Champion of the Year. For exemplary commitment to architectural heritage and community restoration. The crowd applauded. Tenants from all 12 properties. City council members. The actual mayor, not the country club crowd my parents impressed. My parents faced 18 months of probation. $45,000 in legal fees. Their country club membership, at my building, was terminated. The social exile was complete. Their friends learned the truth. They tried to steal from their daughter who actually owned the places they all frequented. Restraining orders were permanent. No contact. No reconciliation attempts. Craig paid back the boat dealer. His reputation as a successful entrepreneur evaporated when people learned his big deal was fraud against his sister. My portfolio grew. Property 13, acquired last month. The old courthouse building. Property 14, under contract. Another landmark. The country club requested a lease renewal. I approved it. Business is business. But I sent them a letter explaining the building's history. Purchased with savings while family mocked. Restored while being called foolish. Protected because I understood its value when they saw only money. There is no place for them in my world anymore. From the 12 fortresses I fought to protect, my future begins now. Not because I needed their approval, but because I never did. The gambler's fallacy ends when you stop feeding quarters into machines that will never pay out. When you realize the jackpot isn't their love, it's your freedom. I walked through the Whitmore Building's restored lobby. Original marble. Brass fixtures we'd replated. Light streaming through 1887 windows I'd personally restored, piece by piece. Dad once called it a money pit. He was right about the pit. Wrong about the money. Sometimes the best revenge isn't rage. It's surviving their dismissal so completely that they're forced to live in the empire they said you'd never build. And paying rent for the privilege.